And I've always been just one that, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. Um, I knew that I could never play professional basketball, not at 5'2". Um, but when I got that flight on an airplane, I just knew this is meant for me. This is something that I need to do. And honestly, I never even knew who Bessie Coleman was or even the Tuskegee Airmen until I was in college. That wasn't in my history book. So it wasn't like I was trying to pattern myself off of anyone. It was just I got an opportunity and I loved it and thought, this is my place. This is where I should be, even though I was a media communications major. And it took me a while to even come up, get that as my goal. But once I flew, that's what I had to do. And so I don't give up on stuff.
On Air, brought to you by Women in Aviation International, strategic partners, Amazon and United. A woman of many firsts. When I was in Denver, I sat down with Captain Theresa Claiborne for a candid conversation. I think you're really going to like this one. Today, I'm in the WAI On Air studio with a dear friend, Captain Theresa Claiborne. Welcome.
Thank you, Kelly.
It's great to be here.
It's great to be here.
You're a woman of many firsts. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how you got started in aviation. And I wanted you to share that story with our listeners today.
Okay. Well, as a child, I had flown on airplanes, but as a passenger. My father was in the military, and so every time we transferred to another base, I might have to get on an airplane. I didn't really think too much about it. It wasn't until I went to college and I decided that I got tired of being in the same place for years. I mean, my father was stationed in a place and we were there since I was in the 9th grade, and here I was in college and I hadn't moved. And that wasn't what I was used to. So I decided I was going to the United States Air Force. And that's how it happened. I was already in college, so I went to ROTC, 2-year program. They said, okay, you got to go to camp. And I went to camp and got a ride on a T-37, and that was it. It's like a lot of pilots. They get on an airplane, they get at the controls, and it's all she wrote. You just decide, I have got to do this. And that's where I was.
And did you have any aviation family members?
No, none at all.
So you were the first there.
The first there.
And part of your family.
Mm-hmm.
And then talk to me about going through training, because again, you got another couple of firsts there, and you didn't really even know that, right? Which I love that part of the story. I didn't know it.
So it wasn't until right before graduation, maybe at the most a month before I graduated, that I found out I was the first Black woman pilot ever in the Air Force. And I was like, what? And honestly, I was really happy that I didn't know until then, because I was just 23 years old. I mean, we know the brain's not even totally formed by 23, right?
Right.
So I think that it would have been a little bit too much pressure. When I look at stress and how I deal with it now, back at 23, I don't think I would have been able to deal with it. So yeah, that was a first. And I don't know if you're alluding to the fact that I'm 5'2".
Well, I kind of was, but because people can't see that about you.
Right,
but
they can't.
Let's tell that story about your height and maybe some of the questions you had about that.
Well, it's just like any industry, especially when it deals with something that kind of skill level. They have parameters. They have qualifications. And the Air Force at the time had a 5'4" height requirement, just as all the airlines pretty much did too. And there was a height that you couldn't be taller than for the military, specifically for canopies. Your head couldn't touch the canopy, because then if you had to eject, you'd have an issue. So
right.
I was 5'2", and I'm taking the physical, and this sounds weird, but I'm doing the female part of the physical. The flight physical was very in-depth. And I was very nervous, and the doctor was trying to get me to relax. And so he starts looking at my paperwork, and he goes, oh, why do you want to be a pilot? And I'd already had my ride in that T-37. And it was like, I got to do this. And I said, it was the most amazing thing, and I just have to do it. And after the physical was over, because I relaxed after I'm telling him my joy in my anticipation of flying an airplane. He goes out and he says to the technician, he said, hey, when she gets to pilot training, they're going to measure her again. We give waivers for height. So just change the number on there. When she gets there, they'll measure her again and she'll get a waiver. But that first physical is all important. There were stories of people who had their eyes weren't perfect. And if your eyes weren't perfect at the initial physical, you didn't get an opportunity to go to pilot training. Yet people would show up at pilot training and then they got glasses. So there's always a way around everything.
Sure.
So that's what happened. He changed the number. I went to pilot training. They measured me and they said, it'll just take you a little while to get this waiver. So you just wait. You can go to academics, but you're going to have to wait to fly until we get the waiver. And in the meantime, the test is that you're going to go out on a T-38. You're going to sit there on the runway. You're going to release the brakes, but you're going to hold them with your feet. And you're going to push the power up to mil power. And as long as the airplane doesn't move forward, you pass. I'm like, okay. I was a little athlete. So that airplane rumbled back and forth. It moved something awful, but it didn't go forward. And so I had passed the test. So I'm thinking it's a matter of time before I get this paperwork back. And a month goes by and I still don't have the paperwork. My class is down at the flight line already. And I reached out to a gentleman that I had worked for on an internship. And I said, Colonel Azuma, I'm still sitting here. I haven't got my waiver yet. And he said, let me make a phone call because one of my friends is one of the surgeon generals. And I said, okay. So he calls him up and the guy said, you know what? I got her paperwork right here on my desk. We're not going to give any more waivers for a while. Yeah. So what he told him is you have to have her go back in and get remeasured. And so I did just that after spending all weekend in my waterbed. I don't think we had those immersion boots back then. Those ones where you hang upside down? I didn't have any of those, but you are taller in the morning than you are in the evening.
Okay.
And so I didn't do anything for the whole weekend. And Monday morning, I gently got into my vehicle, drove up to the flight surgeon's office, and they measured me. And said, oh, you made it. Come on. It was just a matter of one day you could get the waiver and the other day you couldn't get the waiver. I think the surgeon, the flight surgeon was well aware of that. And, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. Right. Yeah, you got it. You're tall enough. And so I went to the flight line and the rest is history.
Take us a little bit through that history. I mean, you flew different aircraft. It was...
Right. Well, so in the military, I flew the KC-135. I did that for 7 years on active duty, and then I went to the reserves. And during the reserves, I decided, I think I will go to the airlines. I'll give it a try, but the airlines also had a 5'4" height requirement. And I thought, well, I'll just try. We'll see what happens. So I take my application with me to an airline, and they just so happened to have a contract for the military pilots to do our simulators. And I hand my paperwork to the person who was in charge of, recruiting. And she said, she looks at it and she's all excited. And she gets to the bottom and it's got the statistics or the vitals. And it says 5'2". And she said, you're not 5'4"? And I said, no, I'm not 5'4". She goes, you can't be 5'4"? And I said, respectfully, I've been standing on the balls of my feet for my entire military career to be 5'4". I'm not 5'4", I'm 5'2". And she said, but you've been flying a KC-135, which is a Boeing 707, which is what we give our check rides in when we have an interview. And I said, yeah, I know. So she said, okay, let me make a few phone calls. She calls down to the training department and she speaks with my instructor who's going to give me the training for the weekend and says, hey, this Captain Claiborne's coming down there for her Air Force training, yearly training, sim training. Can you give her a reach test? Can you make sure she can reach all the buttons? And can you give me a synopsis of how she does on the simulator, how she performs, how she flies? Needless to say, I hope I can say this word. Maybe it'll get cut out. I flew my ass off.
Of course you did.
I really did. I mean, I knew that
you nailed it.
This could be really important. Yeah, I nailed
Mm-hmm.
it. See, you're much better. I nailed it. And I got home on Sunday evening. On Monday morning, I left to actually go back to Texas for military training. And she had called my house, and my father answered the phone, and she said, "We would like Theresa to come for an interview." And, this was back in the day when we didn't have cell phones. And so I had just left the house on Monday morning. So I didn't call my folks Monday night because I'm like, I just left, right? I called them
Right.
on Tuesday. My dad said, "I can't believe you didn't call." And I'm like, "Dad, I just saw you yesterday morning." He goes, "Well, they called you and they want you to come in for an interview." And I'm like, "What?" Turns out that after she got the write up about my height, then she went to the powers that be and said, this is ridiculous. We have this height requirement, but here's a lady who's been flying the KC-135 for the last 7 years. Look at what she did in the simulator. They changed it. Height commensurate with operation of all controls.
Good for you.
And so the height requirement dropped. It just happened to be American Airlines. And I went in for an interview and had some issues with iron. My iron levels weren't high enough, which is something that a lot of women face.
Yes. Yes.
Another one of those, barriers. But so they said, "Hey, look, you know what? Your iron level's a little bit low. It should be 12.0 as the bottom level. Yours is 11.9. So tell you what, go to your doctor, have your doctor prescribe something for you. When you go to your military training each month, have them take your blood. And as soon as we get that high enough, then you can come in and finish up your interview." I said, "Okay." So I did that. I took iron pills. They made me sick. I just couldn't stand it. My levels never came up. Then I got a call from United to come in for an interview. And I postponed that interview because I knew my levels aren't up. So I don't want to go to United and get turned down for the same reason. Finally, United reached back out and said, "Hey, you've delayed this, and we're at the point now where this ESOP thing is getting ready to happen. You need to." So I reluctantly went in,
Okay.
did my interview, and they have you fill out a sheet, with your health on it. And there was a question there, anemia, and you have to put the little box either yes or no. And I thought, Theresa, you've been kind of, dodging bullets for the last how many years of your career? And I said, yes, anemic. And when the nurse got it and looked over my paperwork, and she says, "Oh, I see here that you've marked anemia. What are you doing about it?" I said, "Oh, I take iron pills." She goes, "Okay." And that was the end of that. So United hired me. That's where I wanted to be anyway. So it all worked out. But yeah, it was amazing.
Challenge after challenge, and
Yes.
you never let it get
Yes.
you down.
No.
What mentally allowed you to be there to say, okay, here's a hurdle, but I'm going to overcome it?
That's my personality. They say your personality is from when you're 2 years old. That's what you're getting, right? So if you have a child that's rambunctious, that's what you're getting. And I've always been just one that, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. I knew that I could never play professional basketball, not at 5'2". But when I got that flight on an airplane, I just knew this is meant for me. This is something that I need to do. And honestly, I never even knew who Bessie Coleman was, or even the Tuskegee Airmen, until I was in college. That wasn't in my history book.
No.
So it wasn't like I was trying to pattern myself off of anyone. It was just I got an opportunity and I loved it and thought, this is my place. This is where I should be, even though I was a media communications major. And it took me a while to even come up, get that as my goal. But once I flew, that's what I had to do. And so I don't give up on stuff.
It's a great message. Don't give up on stuff.
Don't give up on
Don't give
whatever
up.
it is.
Yeah.
If it's something that you want to do, don't give up.
So you have a career at United. How many years, please?
I was there for 34 and a half, although United says 34, but you know how kids are. I'm 10 and a half.
Yes.
Right?
So it's 34 and a half.
It's 34 and a half years.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And your time there, name all the models of aircraft? I mean, you were a Boeing series.
I started out on the 727 as a flight engineer, and then
Okay.
from there I went to the 737. Flew that for a couple years. Then I went to a 757 and a 767. Flew that for a couple years, and then I got on the 747-400. Queen of the Skies. I did that for 23 years, I believe it was. And I would have stayed there forever, but United saw fit to park the 747s, and they said, "You, young lady, have to find a real job." And so I went ahead and took the captain bid on the 757. And then once I got there, I was like, wow, you could have been doing this years ago. But the 747 was a dream airplane. So I did a 757, 767 for a couple years. And that was like around COVID time. So I flew for about a year, still lived in California, and went out to DC to fly. And then COVID shut a lot down.
Everything.
We parked that airplane.
Right.
And they said, okay, we got to rebid this stuff because we don't know if that airplane's coming back into the fold. And I bid the 787 captain position and, was just kind of sitting around for a year. And then when we started training on that, I went to the 787, and that's what I retired on. So
the Dreamliner.
The Dreamliner.
And that was your dream aircraft, you later said to me?
Well,
or not really?
I would have gladly have flown that 747-400 as a captain. That's what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I stayed on it so long thinking I'm just going to slide to the left, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't happen because they decided to retire it. So 787, it was definitely the next go. I really didn't have aspirations of flying the 777.
Right.
We always teased when I was on the 747 and called the 777 the light twin because I only had 2 engines, right?
Right.
We had 4. So when it came to whatever I was going to retire on, 787, I had that hands down. And it's a Dreamliner, and, we run around saying we're dream girls. I'm a dream girl. So, it's a great airplane.
All right, we're going to take a quick break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back to have more conversations with Captain Theresa Claiborne.
Women in Aviation International's Aviation for Girls program is dedicated to inspiring girls around the world to pursue their dreams and empowering the next generation of female aviation and aerospace leaders.
Talk to me about your final flight, because I know that's a very momentous. Did you have family there? And I know you had friends there.
I did.
Welcome you as you came off. Talk to us about your last flight.
It was absolutely amazing. My mother was able to go, my brother, my niece, my niece's boyfriend. I had oodles of friends. I mean, I think there was at least 8 young ladies from Sisters of the Skies that were there. I mean, and some of them actually bought full fare tickets. The most important person obviously was my mother, but some of my mentors from back in the day, Bill Norwood was there. With Molly, and Stacey Harris was there, General Stacey Harris.
Yes.
Pat Palazzola was a captain I flew with on the 747, and I'll never forget, we flew together quite a few times, and I would just sit there and just watch him, and because you want to pattern what you do after somebody who does a really good job.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just such an amazing captain, and I would just watch him and go, okay, that's the kind of captain I want to be. Because, I flew with all of them. You fly with the good ones and the bad ones.
Of course.
I'm still here, so obviously everybody was safe, but everybody's not always fun.
Mm-hmm.
You don't learn from everybody, except maybe learn what you don't want to do. And I've always been one that I want to get along with people for the most part, but I know how to lead. So sometimes, everybody's not happy, but, Pat had this way of the flight attendants absolutely adored him. And I said, yeah, that's the kind of captain I want to be. And you know what? I have found out through my retirement and everything that, there are so many flight attendants that have fond memories of when I was a first officer. And they go, oh, Theresa, we loved flying with you. I'm like, it makes you feel good.
Of course.
And so I carried that over into when I became a captain. And that's what you're supposed to do. And I tried to look at every person I flew with and said, I want you to get something from this. And I had a few people say to me, Theresa, I went ahead and took my captain bid, and I thought about you. I want to be a captain like you. And that's a lot. It means a lot. So that final flight was just a culmination of all of that stuff. And proudest moment, my mother being on my flight with me. You know, there are many a day that, you know, I got to go on a trip, Mom, 4 days. I'll see you in 4 days. And, you know, my mother and I were really, really, really close. She was my best friend, my best supporter. You know, I call her the president of my fan club. That sounds silly, but
No, I was just going to chime in that she
yeah,
was the president of your fan
she
club. I
was.
briefly met her, and you could just see the proud
Yeah,
mother emulating from her.
yeah,
And it was just so
yeah.
wonderful to see that relationship. And
It
I'm
was great.
sorry for your loss
Thank
recently,
you,
but
thank you. Yeah, it was a hard one.
I know.
It was a hard one, but I'm doing. Listen, I tell you what, um, she was so proud when that article came out. Kelly, you did an amazing job, and she was just like beaming as she's reading it. And you know, I don't know if you're going to touch upon this, but the Hall of Fame. You know, I got the notice. About 2 weeks after she passed. But it was funny because I knew I had been nominated by a few people.
Yes.
And I had mentioned that to her. And she goes, oh, they're going to pick you. And I said, well, I don't know, Mom. You know, she said, no, if they know what's good for them, they're going to pick you. So, you know, we've had those conversations. Mom, they picked me.
Yeah. And she knew. And that is one of the things I was going to say. I mean, again, earlier we talked about you being many a first in your resume. And I love just the way that you're very modest about it. But you are now being honored by the industry for all your hard work. And frankly, to give back and lean forward also to kind of bring along that next generation and to give back, not only through your work at Sisters of the Skies, but I know you really like to go out and talk to young children, especially girls, at different events. We appreciate that. And I think all of that is a culmination of you being inducted into the 2025 WAI Pioneer Hall of Fame. So we're happy to celebrate that.
It is amazing. It's amazing for me because those are my peers. You guys are my peers.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like when people say, oh, I don't really care what no, everybody cares what people think. I would never say that I don't care what people think. There are times when you have to work through it where, you know, someone doesn't particularly care for you. Let's just do our job.
Right.
But I think that if anybody said, well, I don't really care if my industry thinks that I'm worthy, or I think we all do.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'd already been, you know, recognized by a lot of other groups.
National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Yes, exactly. So those, you know, those are great, just great accolades, really. I mean, it feels good for people to recognize that they think that you speak for them, and that you're a role model, and that you can carry the torch. Because that's what we want. I mean, I won't be here forever, but while I am here, as much as I can do to bring other people along, anybody who didn't have an opportunity, that doesn't mean just women, but men, whoever, if that's what you want to do, if you want to fly airplanes or just anything, whatever you want to do and you want to be good at it, I'm here to help you get that confidence and just never give up.
I like a phrase that you've coined, and we've used it, and I did use it in the article. I am qualified.
Yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
You know, I received the award, the Charles McGee Inspiration Award from AOPA last year. Mm-hmm. And you know, I was being interviewed and being photographed for that award. They were going to do a piece on it. And the young lady, I don't even know what the question really was, but we were on the flight deck. And she started talking, and she asked me a question, and I said, you know, look, there are some people that don't believe in it. They don't believe, they think that diversity is just some, no. I looked at the camera and I said, I'm going to speak right into the camera. I am qualified. And the military knew it. United Airlines knew it. Everybody should know it. I've proven myself. And everybody who's in this position, we are qualified. Does that mean I'm going to fly every flight perfectly? No, it doesn't mean that. That's why you have crews. We're all going to cover each other. I learned a long time ago, one of the best compliments I ever received was from a young boom operator when I was in the military, and we'd gotten down from a mission, and There were four of us, a four-member crew, the pilot, and I was the captain, and I had a first officer, which we call the co-pilot. So pilot, co-pilot, the navigator, and the boom operator. And we get down from this mission and we're doing our debrief. And he says, can I say something, Ace? AC, aircraft commander. I said, yeah, of course. We're debriefing. He said, that was the best flight I've ever been on in my life. And I'm like, what? And he goes, his name is Mike. So if he ever sees this, he'll know I'm talking about him. He said, that flight, it was three of us women and him. He goes, that flight was amazing. And I go, it was amazing? I go, I mean, there are things we could have done better. He goes, no, you don't get it. He goes, what I mean by that is that you guys just worked so well together. He goes, there was no testosterone bouncing off every part of this airplane. He goes, everybody was there to make sure that it went right. Everybody did their job. We had conversation. That's what women bring to the flight deck. Okay? I've had first officers joke with me and say, oh, okay, wife number two. I don't mean to be their wife, but I would say to people a lot, well, I'm a girl.
And you're proud of it.
That's right. And I'm proud of it. And if you're telling me something I think is silly, I'm going to probably sound more like your wife than I do like you. Just because I'm a pilot doesn't mean I'm going to think exactly like you. So, yeah, we bring something real special, I think, to the flight deck. And so the ones I think who will admit it know that it makes for a better working environment.
You've had such a wonderful, illustrious career. And I know I've seen it even here at conference, the young girls that come up to you and just want to be around you because, like you said before, see her, be her.
Yeah.
So for our listeners out there, what is the one piece of advice you give to a young girl who's thinking about maybe getting involved in aviation?
Yeah. I had a rougher time, I think, in pilot training because I was not 100% prepared. I was prepared enough to be there. And my personality makes me go, you're going to get this. So if that means you're staying in the room studying when everybody's out having a fun time at the lake, so be it. What I tell young women is that, especially when they're younger, you don't know what you're going to be when you grow up. So get a well-rounded education. Make sure that you have enough STEM involved there. I mean, I'm old enough to have been in that generation where I remember distinctly, like it was just yesterday, my English teacher telling me, very good, and my math teacher, who happened to be a woman, telling me when I was having an issue with solving a problem, saying, don't worry about it, you're good at English, girls don't have to be good at math. So it's really funny listening this morning at the talk. I mean, she was amazing, and STEM is so important. I'm telling you, back in the day, that's what they would say. I think some of them still think that because when you listen to her talk about how the acceptance of women scientists is not where it should be, that thought process is still prevalent.
Right.
But I would tell them, just try to be as prepared as possible.
I think that's good advice.
Yeah.
Now, you're retiring from United, but I know you have a new role there,
I do.
and maybe there's a book in your future because you have that journalism background.
Yes. There's definitely a book. I think I'd like to do at least two. I thought I'd start out with a children's book because I thought that would be easier. I don't think so. Because, kids can figure you out. When a child walks up, they can figure out really quick in an animal, right? They can figure out really quick if you're a good one or a bad one.
Right.
You can't fool them. So, I thought no problem. I'll write a children's book. I think that's a little more difficult than writing another book. So I've got to work on it. The ideas are flowing. They are flowing. I got to sit still long enough to do it.
Okay.
And I have not sat still long enough.
And what is your new role with United, please?
I fall kind of under that team of global learning, community impact. So I take a lot of pleasure out of going to universities, speaking with young people, helping to recruit not just for piloting, but also for other areas at United Airlines, and it's joyful. It's joyful. Because people look at aviation and especially pilots, and they think that we're something special. Well, we're human beings. We put our clothes on the same as everybody else, right? But we do have that edge. And so if I can use the edge I have to attract young people, to let them know that you don't have to want to be a pilot, but if you come to United, you're going to be happy. You're going to find your niche, right? Did I say that right? Niche.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I'm still not to that point where I can say to United, when they call me up and say, "Hey, Theresa, we're going to go to this school, or we're going to go do this. You want to be there." Like, I was even there for the Martin Luther King parade in Houston. Things like that's fun. That's good stuff. That's dealing with the community, right? I don't know how to say no. So I don't get that downtime. I need that downtime to sit in, but I'm not complaining right now. I'm just realizing that I need to learn how to say, you know what, I need a break. I need a little break.
Right.
So I thought I was going to take off at least 6 months, right, after retirement. And no, I didn't take off
That
6 months.
didn't happen.
Mm-mm. Not at all.
Theresa Claiborne, thank you for being in studio with us, for inspiring countless girls and sharing your story, which I believe is just so important for us as we talk about to see her be her. And thank you for sharing your inspiration and telling girls just be prepared.
Yep. Thank you, Kelly. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Enjoy retirement.
It's an honor. Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
retirement. Okay.
Right. Thank you. Truly inspiring. And I'll leave you with one of Theresa's mantras. If you can see it, you can be it. And we'll see you on the next episode of On Air.